After a year of explosive growth in artificial intelligence, we are still in the early stages of understanding the threats around its use. And in 2024, experts say the U.S. is facing increasing threats, especially during a crucial election year. So for more on this, we're joined by Shawn Henry. He's a former FBI Executive Assistant Director and is now the Chief Security Officer of CrowdStrike Services. Good to see you. Happy New Year.
Glad to be here. Happy New Year to you as well.
So, I mean, we talked about this a lot during the last election back in 2020. We talked about it in 2016. How has the threat evolved going into 2024?
It goes back even longer than that. Foreign adversaries have been targeting our election process for many years, trying to disrupt the democracy, trying to create chaos and sow division in the U.S. populace. And when we look at what they're doing now, there are multiple nation states that are engaged in this type of activity. It's a big concern going into 2024.
How organized is it? I mean, are we thinking about some guy in his mother's basement in a hoodie, or are we thinking about, foreign actors orchestrated by governments?
It's both, but I think the biggest threat, of course, is nation states who have incredible capability from a technical perspective. They've got a lot of resources. They can scale. They've got clear motivation, and they're actively engaged in a 24/7 threat to the U.S. democracy and democracies abroad. There are more than 40 big democratic elections around the world: India, Mexico, South Africa, Taiwan, among others. And these nations want to disrupt democracies, not just in the U.S., although that's a major target.
So it's so interesting, Shawn, because on one hand, you're talking about nation states that are perpetrating these cyber attacks. And let's just separate, for example, the threat of misinformation on the internet as we go into this election. You've got our laws that protect freedom of speech, but that law is being exploited by these state nefarious actors to pump out this misinformation. So does the FBI or does the federal government see a responsibility by the owners of these big tech companies? I'm talking about the Elons of the world. I'm talking about the Mark Zuckerbergs, to try and police or even prevent these, because we're talking, people don't realize that there are like farms, rooms of like dozens, if not hundreds of people that are pumping out misinformation on the internet. And a gullible populace, I'm sorry to use that word, but that's sometimes what it feels like, is just absorbing that and then making decisions that have real world implications.
Yeah, I think certainly companies have a responsibility to ensure that the data that's being pushed out, that there's some level of authenticity to it. I think at the end of the day, it comes down to the American public, who has to decide what's accurate and not. People have to look at the source of the information, the validity of the information, who's putting it out, what's their motivation. I think an educated consumer is really going to be the most important way to overcome some of these threats.
Yeah, but when it comes to consumption and people may be checking the source, but maybe they've lost trust or faith in other sources that have deemed reputable. I mean, major news organizations put out information because they have standards departments and they have rules and regulations that they follow in order to authenticate information. What would you say to those people who are maybe dismayed?
Yeah, the bad guys don't have regulations. They don't have to follow the law. That's a huge problem. We use AI to actually identify malicious AI, too. There's this constant cat and mouse game. Every time there's an innovation in technology, somebody looks for a way to overcome it, and this goes back and forth. So we'll be able to use AI to identify that. I think that's going to happen at the macro level. Governments are going to become more involved. There will be a bit better education process as we get closer to the election. But this is something that's not going away. These adversaries are, they're motivated. They've got a clear intent to disrupt what happens here in the United States, and we've got to be concerned about that.
All right.
Shawn Henry, thank you very much. Appreciate it as always.
Thank you.